Good afternoon and welcome to this series of dialogues that Voice and Data has initiated on different topics which are so relevant as far as the entire industry is concerned. We are talking about 5G. This is this has been an area on which there is huge amount of discussion that has already taken place. But what we want to focus today is we want to talk about creating value for the citizens and creating value for the society. Okay, so that is the focus of our discussion today. And we will talk about, which are the ways, which are the use cases in which it is going to 5G is going to impact the citizen and the society. We are going to talk about the technologies which are going to be there absolutely sort of center stage, and what is going to be the kind of enabling environment that is required for us to achieve this. So, we already, I'm sure all the people who are attending this are aware of 5G and the impact that it is happening. It is more than just something which is faster, another version of after 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G. It's not just that we are talking of higher speed. It is not just that we are talking about a thicker pipe. We are talking of a completely new kind of technology that is emerging along with 5G. We'll talk more about that. I've got a fantastic panel with me, which will be sharing their views on these various issues that are there. It is going to start affecting the citizens like never before. If you look at each and every progression that took place from 2G to 3G, we suddenly found that there were new applications that could come, and we could, as individuals, as users, as customers, we could do things which are not earlier possible, with the 2G kind of technologies. For instance, today when we talk about the way we look at maps or the way we are doing e-commerce, kind of a thing would not have been possible if the speeds were low and if the latencies were high. So every movement that you do in terms of new technologies automatically opens the doors for a huge amount of new applications. Now, if we start talking about higher speeds, and low latency, then there will be newer applications that will come up. And that is what is going to be my first question to my this great panel that I have with me. That what do you think are going to be the new areas which will get impacted? What will be the kind of use cases that will be there? Let me start with you, General Kochhar. You as DG of COAI have been right at the center stage of all these talks that are happening about 5G. Now, when we start talking about low latency, when we start talking about more data, when we talk of cloud, we talk of data analytics, and we talk of the IoT devices, what are some of the areas that will see the maximum impact of 5G? Over to you, General Kochhar.
Thank you, Pradeep. See, what you rightly said, that 5G is going to be a new paradigm. It is not an upgradation. That is something which people have to understand. And the major differences have been spelled out by you. Of course, latency is there, huge amount of capacities are there, and speed obviously will increase manifold. It's beyond imagination. The important thing is that this is the first step which has ever been taken to integrate machines with humans through the network. It has never happened. And this is the first technology which is going to do this. And this is what is going to actually dictate the pathway for this technology. Now you're asking me about use cases. Use cases, all of them cannot happen overnight. Just when if 5G gets installed and made commercial, say by next month, to say that all use cases will come on board will not happen. So initially, what we are going to see is will be just improvement of the services which are being used by the citizenry, and some amount of pressing uh, applications which have been the focus of our attention, both by the consumers as well as by the government, and which have been extenuated by the COVID situation. And that would mean education, that would mean medical facilities, that would mean agriculture. These definitely have been impacted, and there is a crying need for having connectivity and keep bringing in the machines, the sensors, and the human beings together. So this is the first phase which will happen. As we go forward, Industry 4.0 is going to kick in. Smart cities are going to kick in.
Sorry, I'm just saying that. So, are you saying that healthcare is going to be one of the first areas that are going to be impacted? So, are we ultimately going to see the telemedicine dream that we have always had, and not just remote consultancy, but are we talking of remote operations, and what sort of changes that you see in the healthcare sector?
That's a very good question. You see, from the technology point of view, what you are saying is possible with 5G. But will it happen? There will be a number of permutation combinations, number of players, number of variables which will come into play. The patient himself, is he psychologically ready to be treated and operated upon in this manner? Are doctors available to do this? Do we have stability of the networks? Do we have the machines, robotic machines, which are capable of doing this? If you see only from the telecom point of view, yes, it is possible. But environmental point of view, it will take some doing. Certainly, it will take some doing. It is not going to be the flick of a switch that, okay, not done this, it will happen. It won't.
Okay, so it's a path.
It's a path. It's a path.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you were talking about the industrial usages.
Yeah, so I was saying that anything which gets connected to a network, which has a identifier like an IP address, and which can be manipulated remotely using the network delivering commands, and the device itself, obeying those commands using robotics and using control systems. Now that is something which will open up 5G applications hugely, and anything that fits into these parameters will be an application which will ride over 5G. But 5G is an enabler. It is not. It is not a panacea that it has to deliver everything. Finally, what will depend is what is the demand from the consumer. If there is demand, it will happen. If there is no demand, it won't.
I like what you said. 5G is going to be the enabler. Deepak, so if 5G is the enabler, let's take a thing like smart cities. What kind of changes do you think coming because of, and what is the impact on the citizenry that will be there because of innovations that we should expect in smart cities?
So, this will be only limited by imagination, I believe. The fundamental change, as Mr. Kochhar said, is the additional connectivity of machines and beyond. When I say beyond, it's only limited by our imagination, I suppose. Whatever we see around us, including machines, moving things, non-moving things, stationary items, the activities we perform, practically everything will have opportunity to get connected. And it's only by our imagination, whether it is, some sort of collecting activities. We see a lot of aggregated services today, which are, getting delivered by OTTs. The way same things used to be done differently in past will see new flavors in life. That's where the bulk of transformation will come. And these smart cities, having millions of sensors in practically every aspect of life, the way we live, the way services are delivered, the way we entertain ourselves, the way we go and visit parks for sports centers. Each of these activities, I believe, is going for a big change. And The restriction will be again as far as adoption is concerned, affordability is concerned, and practicality of these aspects is concerned, which may take a little bit of longer time. Many experiments are going to happen. We saw that change when we evolved from 2G to 3G. Applications came and gone, and some applications which were most expected application didn't work out. But they altogether different applications took the world by storm. And same stuff happened in 4G, and a similar, bigger, much wider change will happen in 5G.
Yeah, so as you said, limited by imagination, and you're right that it is difficult to predict. And initially, with each of the transformations, people thought that this is something that will become important. That did not. Another application became important. But still, if you were to put your fingers on the top, let's say 3 areas that you think are going to get transformed because of 5G, what would those be, Deepak? By the way, audience, Deepak is having some problem with his video because of, I think, the corporate firewall, and therefore we are able to listen to him, but we are unable to see him. So, what do you think? What is your best guess of the 3 areas that will be most impacted?
So rather than specifics, Pradeep, I would say we should see it as the first most point is the way information is getting collected today. There are a lot of manual activities, manual dependencies. All of this should get disappeared. Uh, Specifically, if I say information collection from vehicles, different signboards, machines particularly, that is the first area of transformation. And we will see connected car, connected vehicle, connected moving stuff of every type. That is the first area, I believe. Even you can go to factories. I mean, we have these, heavy earth moving machineries, their inventory tracking. We are still doing it, but we are doing it in a very, a prime methodology. It will see a big change. Then beyond that, if we go to, the industry, everybody is talking about industry next wave. The way private networks are being done in premises, in factories, this will see the biggest change in my view.
Okay.
Cables, in a significant way. How much time it takes, that is the only question that I believe we should ask ourselves. The cables connecting, interconnecting machines, servers, sensors, all of that should disappear. The next wave of impact should be, I believe, beyond machines. When I say beyond machines, even the farming sector, the sensors, what sensors we create, the science is developing continuously, even the plants, even the soil, even the water dispensing systems, the flood controlling systems. So a lot of things which are even beyond moving machines that will flood information systems. And as we have more processing capabilities going forward, that bulk of information enablement, the kind of information that we will have at our disposal at round the clock 24/7 without visiting field, that will transform life.
I really wish what you said comes true, because for years we've been talking about agricultural productivity, and I mean, considering that 60% of our workforce is deployed in agriculture, it is very essential for us to bring in a great amount of technology there. So I wish what you are saying comes true, and there is transformation of agriculture that takes place. Over to you, Pankaj. And my question still remains the same. What do you think are going to be some of the, maybe the industry 4.0 specific use cases, enterprise focus? And
Thank you.
please keep it more in terms of the citizens and the society. True. Yeah.
Thank you, Pradeep, and thanks, General Kochhar, for your views, and Deepak, wonderful thoughts. I think, and I did think about the citizens, and I thought, what is that society will get differently from 5G? And we always have been, and as I was telling just now, 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G was all in a upgrade mode. 5G is not. While the current 5G, which is not standalone, I don't want to talk about it. It's basically it's adding one more bogey to 4G, right? So whatever we are doing worldwide since 2018, and we will do it for next 2-3 years, is majorly an extension of one of the 5G use cases, which is enormous capacity and enormous broadband speed. So let's keep that separate. When we finally go to the real 5G, which is standalone 5G, is when the real use cases will happen. And I think it's another 2-3 years away. My understanding is that 5G, when it is working in an independent standalone mode, will do lots and lots of changes, because if you see the 5G targets, the first one was getting into 10 millisecond range, which is this not standalone, but the one which goes into the 1 millisecond and the less than 1 millisecond, 0.1 millisecond range of latency. Huge transformation, because these two tenets, these two targets which ITU has taken is changing life, because now you are going real time. So I feel two things happening in society at large. One is enterprise and another is public safety. I personally feel these two will get the most boost from this, because when I say 1 millisecond and when I say 0.1 millisecond, I feel the energy which was not there earlier within the milliseconds of 4G or 3G can suddenly happen now. So now I could have a geotag in a public safety environment, in a flood zone or an earthquake or a fire hazard. I could retrieve my critical livestock or using centimeter of geotag accuracy, rather than having in meters and in different situations. I also feel enterprise private 5G is going to change how industries, how verticals will work. Why I'm not talking about telco, because telco will always do B2C, and that is where the mobility, biggest money, the voice and the data and gaming and videos and well, I'm not talking about that. That is just getting abundance, but that's not big deal. The big deal is enterprises 4.0, which means now if I have a shop floor and I have a push to talk, which was my ease of use, or I have a walkie-talkie, that's the second type of network. I have a IT OT integration, which is third type of network. I have SCADA. I have so many things, 7 things working in an industry floor to make a business use case, and it's very complex. With this latency drop, I think 5G is going to aggregate all of that technology into one. I think that is what I feel is the change, because now 5G, I could even do that push to talk. I could do that walkie-talkie. I could do that mobility connectivity. I could use spectrum to what should I say? I could have these guided vehicles on the shop floor, predicted on the latitude, longitude, height, depth,
So
and
you
the
are also,
robotics.
so you are also taking it to another level. It is not just human to machine, but you are saying also machine to machine
Machine to
interaction
machine.
and so on, and that will bring about a new kind of ways in which
That's what 4.0 is, right? We have
right.
done in last so many years. We always talked about revolution in IT, but I think it is mostly about machine to machine, where AI, cloud native, and anything to do with quality of service is now a priority. It was not priority till 4G, right? Everything was best estimate. I wanted an internet, it worked, and I was done. I think the life with 5G is going to take a bit further, because the PDUs, which each of these sensors will initiate or terminate or create, will have a quality of service, and each will get the definitive treatment. Let me give you an example so that we understand and appreciate. I can text, it takes a byte. I can do a 8K video, it takes hundreds of MBs. I can do gaming, again, different aspect. And if I have to do this surgery, if I have to move a robotic arm, or if I have to do a rescue in a public safety environment, that's a different kind of quality of service I need to provide. So I'm not saying that I will give different or less, or I'll give right quality of service now, because I need a byte to be moved for a text. I will give a right policy within the radio, within the transport, and within the core element, which is basically terminating the content and internet and IMS and whatever. So all three we'll have these, what should I say, planes. We call it network slice, but I didn't want to use that word. But ideally, we will finally in 5G be able to even pick up a granule or even pick up a mountain and give it a treatment which it desires and safely transfer it around around all the 5G ecosystem. And one more point, I think service-based function is what is changing the life for us. It was not earlier. It was mostly it was boxes, it was appliances. Now it is more NFVI driven, which means if I have 5 services today, I can do 200 tomorrow. Nobody's going to stop me because the infrastructure is ready. The platform is ready. So 5G is a platform, I will say, rather than a technology. So yeah, I'll stop there. I'll pause. But I feel it's going to change a lot of dimensions with the ultra real time latency and machine functions. Yeah.
But URLLC is still a few years away. I guess
that's why I'm saying, yeah, let's hang on.
Will keep on coming in and so on. So let me move on to the next part, which is the technology part. But before I go to that, there is a poll question that we have, and I would request the Voice and Data team if they could run the first poll, which is on which factors do you think can enable service provider business transformation. So can you please run that poll? And my request to the audience is if you can give your choices, and we will compile it, and at the end of our second section debate, we will share these results with you. So now is the time for you to vote on one of the 4 options. Backend team, question to you, how much time do we need to give for this poll?
In total 50 seconds, we have 10 seconds left. Yes.
10 seconds left. Okay, so another 10 seconds, please give your votes. So let me now come to the second part, which is that let's talk about technology. And I'll start this time with you, Deepak. How are the telcos geared up for the challenges to upgrade the existing infrastructure to 5G? Because, this requires a lot of technology, a lot of changes that are needed to have a completely new kind of an infrastructure. And also, what network innovations are going to happen from the operator's perspective? And would also request you to talk about, the optical network infrastructure and the mobile cloud infrastructure. How do you see the entire technology evolving for telcos, and how are you geared up for that?
Yeah, so chain of question. I hope I remember all of them when I try to answer that. So first one is what operators are doing to prepare. I believe this debate has been going on so far. The work largely that has been going on was around standards and clarity around standards. There have been some regional flavors around standards, and predominantly that's where probably last 2 or 3 years focus has been. And in last year, world has seen, I believe, more than 60, 70 plus networks where 5G has already been launched. And it is good that we say that when India is going to, kind of embark on this journey, this will be a much more stable, proven technology and ecosystem. And, it is good to be first in the race at times, but at the same time, it is important for a country like India, it is important to bring whatever new we bring in an efficient way as well. And that's where this maturity counts a lot. Going forward, right now, I believe we hear some news or other each and every alternate day. There are large-scale trials. Even government has helped out operators with, whatever is needed in terms of spectrum, getting equipment, partner, allowing that equipment or a sizable trial to the relevant operators. So those trials are going on. There are smaller, multiple series of experiments that are already on among all operators globally and India as well. One change in this that I believe is the learning, the shift that Pankaj has mentioned. It is a platform, and this platform is pretty different. It is not the same platform. The technology we say, end of the day, it is a telecom technology. It is the same IP. It is the similar radio with some announcements, but the platform is changing. And that new paradigm of building this platform has a lot of demanding asks in terms of flexibility, agility, and openness. And when I say flexibility and agility means when Pankaj spoke about 1 millisecond challenge and some millisecond challenge, it's not limited to radios. The network at the back end, your core location, your content location, the way you distribute that, and the way you take care of those differentiated services, ranging from a few bytes to maybe hundreds of megabytes. All of these challenges are oriented or built into this 5G delivery platform. So that is the current challenge where all of this has to come together: the radio part, the backhaul, the transport, and there are hundreds of constituents within that. Then the core architecture, existing core architecture of 4G, and we are a nation. While we are embarking on 5G, we still have millions of subscribers working on 2G. We have to take care of that. We have existing services, multi-service operators. When we talk about industry 4.0, there are B2B transitions that is going to take place. Managing anything greenfield is much easier part, but managing transition is the challenge, and managing that transition while you are carrying live services without degrading experience is another challenge. So these are the areas that are part of our current focus. In terms of innovations, I would say Pankaj touched upon few things. We keep hearing some of those buzzwords: disaggregations, giving away the books, methodology, and thought process has to get involved to a platform thinking, virtualized thinking, agile thinking rather than a static, solid state box kind of thinking that used to exist 4, 5, 6 years back. And that has thrown its own challenges. Uh, the principal change that I see that is happening right now is it is not off the shelf platform or technology or product anymore. So an operator has the capability to acquire multiple things across hardware, across software, across various technologies, and put them together, stitch them together in a not so clear world anymore. The moment we say disaggregation, that means those bigger building blocks that we used to put together now have been fragmented into hundreds of constituents. And it is operators' task to integrate them well, to stitch one platform which can deliver the so-called, dreamed delivery of millisecond, ultra high reliability, and we say 100 times faster 5G. This is what
Yes,
I would say.
to use the analogy that has often been said, it's like changing the engine of a plane while it is flying.
Yes, definitely. I mean,
that is the kind of complexity that you're talking about.
And next, I would say you are the one who is constructing the plane as well.
Absolutely. That's a good one. So, Pankaj, Juniper is sort of enabling this entire process to happen, right? But there is a whole lot of hype also which is there. People like to drop in a whole lot of technical jargon and so on. So when you talk about the architecture which is evolving, what do you think is hype? What do you think is reality?
Beautiful questions. I think, yeah, I'm audible. So architecture, what shifts and majorly is happening on two planes. I think leave the latency aspect, leave the bits, bytes, QS, and network slice, all the jargons away. But I think if you see what 5G architecture was built on, I used to have in 4G 3 boxes. I used to have P gateway, S gateway, T gateway, MME. I was done. But if I see the control plane now and the forwarding plane, it's completely separated. I didn't do it. 5G architecture 3GPP has finally said that user plane function will be placed within a direct end user and the radio and the content. So that's a big architectural shift. It was not there. I used to connect a UE to the core, and there used to be one line. Not anymore. There's a bend now. The architectural bend is that control whatever is not real time. For example, a policy function, charging function, sessions. Okay, sessions management was never there a priority. A quality of service function, a slice function. So there will be these small VNFs which can stay in a central data center, say at a city level or at a hub level also, because those functions are control functions. They don't need to be real time. But there are some functions, baseband functions, CUDU, radio getting split into three, right? You have a remote radio end, you have a baseband, and you have one more component. So the aim was whatever compute you were trying to do at 5 different places, we'll populate it in 2. One is it in the distributed function, which is nearest, is going to give these milliseconds, as Deepak was saying. The possibility was not if I have kept it in the core, because then it will be already 10 milliseconds or more. So I have to keep from the start of traffic, that is customer, device, and machines, a nearest possible a slice of software or a slice of service, which I can call it distributed segregated function. And in that, I will have a centralized control function. And if I have to treat my traffic and give a particular policy to have a right turn there and have a shortcut, I could even do that and get that round trip measures rather than going back up. So I think a lot of architectural changes, if I have to bullet it 3, I think cloud first comes to my mind, right? Rather than appliance and rather than chassis, anything will. All your architectures in 5G will have a cloud connectivity to the edge compute location, which is just a kilometer. I won't say kilometer. I'll say 2 kilometers away or something like that. So cloud first, cloud native, container based operation is now standard in 5G, right? That's what we have arrived, right? I feel second is mostly about, while you have done these architectural changes, you will have a huge and a humongous IT skills required now. I didn't see, I won't name them, but I didn't see these guys already in telco, because I never would have imagined a person with a CPU experience and compute experience and a server experience and services and software experience working in a telco, because 95% was only telco, major switching and routing and all that, right? But I think that is a second mix which is going to create a different kind of architecture. And then the third is an element when I have to fuse a telco enterprise grade kind of situation here. Now you understand what I'm trying to say. The IT which is coming from enterprise, the telco, both have to work together for the benefits of the 5G architecture. There has to be one more layer which I will say is the services layer which they will create. So it will be an ecosystem delivery. It will be about an industry vertical, as General Kochhar was also saying. Can it be healthcare? Can it be agriculture? And that experience will come from these enterprise folks, right? Whereas telco will have that operational capability, running online, running real time. So I think that fusion in the architecture I can see, and that is going to help the society at large, and that is going to help the common man who may be at a home or traveling in a car, V2X, V2 anyone. That's an interesting formula. I can spend hour on V2X, but I don't want to do that now. I'm not talking about autonomous cars. I don't like that. But there are 20 other functions which cars will do today. Their insurance reduction, their driver behavior, their upgrade of fuel proactively, taking them to the charging station. I don't know. There are 200 things which car will. Forget about the autonomous, because I think that's the. And if I tell Deepak will again raise, he'll say, no, this is not possible. I know, but there are so many other things where 5G can provide, leaving the corner cases which normally are marketing based. but I will be able to deliver this architecture. It's a fusion of enterprise and telco trying to create a new use case, business case for this new
Absolutely.
virtual platform.
So I'm glad what you're talking about is that a whole lot of technology is going to emerge because you are talking now the control not just at the core but at the user end also, right? And
At the session level, at the each session of a user, not only user. If he has 100 sessions using 100 things, each session will have a ID, and I will be able to take it to a particular topology, take it to a particular slice, take it to a different core. So everything is transparent.
no, absolutely. So, that requires a completely different kind of an integration as far as. So, General Kochhar, let me come to you and, pose the same question to you, but from a different viewpoint. That is that, if we are talking about more of edge computing that is happening, and, we are also talking about new devices because, some of the old 4G devices will not work on 5G. So what is happening in terms of this edge computing in the new devices? You're on mute, I think.
Yeah, the important thing to note is that both my co-panelists have brought it out so succinctly. Really, they've not left anything which needs to be said further. But I'll try to put it in a different lens. If you look at the merging of the environment, what are we trying to say? We are trying to work in an expanded space and with severe constraints on time. That means the time is getting compressed and the space of working is getting expanded. To my mind, it's a simple aggregation of these two factors which is making all these things happen. Now, to make this thing happen, adaptability and flexibility are going to be the keywords. The networks require adaptability and flexibility, and that is where Pankaj referred to a disaggregated control plane. Similar aspect is required for the user, so they require a disaggregated control data plane. Now, to make all this functional, we require something which will make these things work even when there is poor connectivity or there is disruption in connectivity. So that will happen if we have disaggregated data centers and computing at the edge. So I'm looking at it from that point of analysis rather than looking of what has been built up. So people who would have built up all this would have thought about this, that this is the manner in which things are going to pan out. And now, while you have not asked me, but I would like to say that even cybersecurity will have to be looked at quite differently. So far, the cybersecurity people, Pankaj spoke about the software people, I'm saying cybersecurity people. Cybersecurity people were always an overlay. It was a separate layer which was coming onto the networks, to the data plane. It won't happen anymore in 5G because it has to have the same flexibility and the same adaptability and all the same functions that 5G as a network has, as a data plane has. So therefore, it has to be built from organically within 5G from scratch. So this is going to be a very major change. And similarly, on the handset that you said, it will require
security. I'm just enhancing your point. So what you are essentially saying is that in terms of the security now, since the thing is shifting from the core also to the periphery, therefore there are going to be lots of endpoint security becomes important and so on, and therefore there is a completely different kind of a new layer of security that would be required, right?
Not a layer. I would tend, sorry to say, I would like to disagree. Security can no longer be a layer. It has to be part of the system. That is what I'm trying to say. That thinking past up to 4G was okay. Everything was layered, right? Now it will not be like that. It will be an integrated whole, a composite whole, right? Having the same type of characteristics. Right? Now, depending on the use cases, will emerge the type of devices that will be used. If it is a simple use case of only getting a better experience, there is no need to go in for a device that does all the capabilities of utilizing 5G characteristics. But if we go into enterprise business, then the devices will have to be specially built for that. And what I mean by that is it will have to have computing power. It will have to have some storage there, and yet we light. And then it should be able to transmit in sufficiently fast time and with sufficiently less latency to the edge storage devices, maybe to the core storage devices, and draw in data and send back data. So it doesn't have to rely on doing computation on the device itself, and therefore the device weight and the device consumption of power will actually reduce. If it is handled well. But the cost and the complexity of the device will definitely increase. And the software component, and this is important, the software component on the device as well as on all these elements of the network is going to increase. If we want to do the entire thing with hardware, we'll be constrained. But if all that what we are saying has to be achieved, it has to be done with software, which brings in both challenges as well as opportunities. And therefore, many aspects that Pankaj brought out about new capabilities will have to be thought about, right? So this is the way I think about the aspects.
Thanks a lot for talking about the complexity and how this entire. Pankaj, you wanted to say.
Yeah, I would have been from Juniper to say more about security, and I didn't have to. I loved the line General Kochhar used, that it has to be everywhere, and that's a breathing space, right? I feel we used to have a different kind of a security thinking mindset. It has to be changed, right? As I said, the architecture is now that you're directly connecting anything to anything, right? There's no these fat pipes which you control and then terminate a GI firewall or a G7 or whatever firewalls. Now, security has to be connected everywhere. It has to be in your routing function. It has to be in your switching function. It has to be in your application function. It has to be in host function. It has to be in hypervisor. It has to be in your COTS appliance, which you are trying to do, and you have to harden it. So I'm saying, rather than getting a device from an OEM which was retrofitted and was taken care, gone are those days, because you are creating these layers which are horizontally able to scale. You got to have security on each layer, and it has to be connected, right? You can't have just security, because there are easy attacks which are possible nowadays. You heard what people are trying to do with ransomware. You heard denial of service attacks. You heard about a lot of people detecting it. But the ultimate goal
and so on. So
is enforcement. Yes. So if you're not able to enforce in the real time, the damage would be done. So I think real time enforcement in terabits of capacity is what time has come. It's not an offline security. And thanks for bringing that point. Yeah, beautiful.
Absolutely. So at this stage, there are two questions that I see on the chat box. So I will quickly answer, and because now we have only about 15 minutes left, may I request for very short answers. General Kochhar, there is this question about nowadays everyone is scared about 4G radio infrared. What about 5G? There have been these court cases about EMF and so on. So, your views perhaps on that.
So the question boils down to EMF. It's irrespective whether it comes from 4G or 5G. But there are adequate amount of studies and there are adequate amount of experimentation which has been done worldwide, which says that EMF does not, non-ionizing EMF does not affect human beings. Okay. Now the question is, then why are people scared? Even knowledgeable people like you and me sitting here will be put in a dilemma if somebody comes and tells me, no, whatever these studies may say, but you don't know, I have seen it happening. So we will say, they must have missed out 0.001 somewhere. And that means we are the fence sitters. We need to be educated. That is one category, and that is easier to handle. The second category is actually mischief mongers with vested interests. who go around beating the drum saying that, oh, EMF will kill you, don't let 5G come in, and back end they do something else. So I will not get into what they do, but everybody knows what they are up to. And therefore, those are the people who have to be.
The apprehension is that, you need more towers because, and therefore,
Actually,
you perhaps
you need more small towers, but the power emitted from those towers is going to be much less.
Smaller,
right?
Correct.
So therefore, actually, the EMF which will be which a human being will be subjected to in the range of that tower will be much less. So it is having more towers does not mean that there is going to be more radiation, because the power output of these towers is going to be much less.
Sure.
So I hope that answers your specific question.
No, so a quick question also to you, Deepak. The question is, what are your views on the scope of disaggregation in the backhaul transport networks?
Disaggregation, I believe, have been easier in some of the things which are like in core and radio. Yes, as Pankaj mentioned, the base station getting divided into 3 components. Transport layers typically have been very close to physics. I mean, the layer 0, 1, 2, and 3. And that's where that easy segregation of, compute and transport or switching or resources is not that much applicable as well conceived it is today on some of the other components. However, still there are ways to do disaggregation which are being experimented in routers particularly, because routers are the most resource intensive devices, I would say, if we talk about transport network. That's where these experiments are still on. There are few organizations which have successfully demonstrated but very limited concepts. So I would say that it's not as mature a concept in transport disaggregation as it is in core and data centers, but yes, it is evolving. That efforts are still on. The other aspect is, beside technology, the affordability, sustainability, and the you say the value, or eventually either in lowering the TCO or overall life cycle TCO. That's where there is a question mark in transport, where some of these disaggregations have failed to prove themselves so far, and that is where you see a relatively lower adoption. But I believe efforts are still on, and let's hope for the best, that we see someday increased role played by these concepts in transport as well.
Sure. Yeah, okay. So if we are ready with the results of the first poll, can we see them on the screen, please?
Is it visible, sir? Okay, so let me tell you.
No,
so 61,
17, 11, yeah. So all the above 60%, right? So absolutely, I think that is what is there, and that is what my panelists also have been talking about. They've been talking about the change in terms of all the components which are there. So I'm glad that the audience is completely in agreement. Can we also run the second poll at this time, please? Which one of these do you consider as major architectural shifts? Boxes to cloud, centralized to distributed architecture, static capacity to dynamic capacity, manual to automated operations? Let me now move on to the third part, which is what is going to be the enabling environment that is required. So this time, let me start with you, General Kochhar. Telcos have been reeling under a lot of pressure, policy related, ARPU related, debt related, and so on. What do you see? How should the government of India play a role in terms of creating an enabling environment? And what are, I mean, they're already doing a lot of things. So what are some of the challenges that still need to be addressed?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and which takes almost 90% of my time in the COAI. Importantly, there are 2 or 3 headings under which the government can facilitate the rollout of 5G seamlessly. One obviously is finance, and in finance there'll be 2 subheads. One is increasing the revenues to the operator. Second is decreasing their expenses. And the third one would be making rules and regulation which facilitate rollouts in a much better manner. I'll take each one of them. I give 1 minute on each. Now, as far as improving the revenue collection is concerned, we are at the lowest priced telecom in the world. We supply data at the lowest charge rates, which is 1 paisa per MB, which is because of hyper competition which has happened over the last few years. Whatever we may say, our networks are still one of the best in the world, right? So that needs the rates at which we collect are not sufficient for us to be operationally viable. And this is going to become more complex as 5G goes on because the capex is going to be very heavy. Therefore, our requirement is to increase the cost of the services that we provide. And that is something that is colloquially termed as floor price. That has been taken up with the government, that operators are talking on themselves too. The second is reducing the cost or the revenue outflow. In this, there are 2. One is legacy, and that is mainly AGR.
Correct.
Right. So the definition of AGR needs to be revisited. What has gone past cannot be undone because the courts have already pronounced a judgment on that. So going forward, at least the AGR definition should be revised to something which is more acceptable and which is more practical, right? Which is more logical. Let me put it that way.
Right.
So this is one. Second legacy is about fees and levies which have outlived their requirement. Unfortunately, the fees and levies continue to be layered. Before the auction came, there were fees and levies which we thought will go away after the auctions came. Now they are still continuing, and we still have to pay auction price. So that requires to be rationalized. There are dues from the government which have to be paid back to the telcos, like GST areas. GST does not have provisions for paying back areas. That has to be seen by the government as to how it can be done. The next point is about facilitation. Now, here I would say that the infrastructure which is required for 5G rollout has to be strengthened, especially in the fiber domain. At this point of time, we do not have adequate amount of fiberization. All operators are willing to do it, but it cannot happen because the recommendations of the central government about ROW charges and the like are not being obeyed or followed by all state agencies or local bodies. They find their own jurisdiction, they find their own rates, which becomes extremely difficult for telcos to roll out this network. The last point is about spectrum pricing. The spectrum pricing, the algorithms which were being used for the previous Gs cannot be applied on a paradigmly shifted technology. Like we've been saying, 5G is not what 4G was. It is an integrated offering of business case and technology. And therefore, if the government looks at it from that point of view, that network rollout is essential like water and electricity, and they should not look at the revenue they collect from here alone, but they should look at the revenue which comes colloquially after services, after sectors, ride on this telecom network and start doing business. So that will be much higher.
So essentially, to sum up all your 5 points, you are saying stop looking at us like a golden goose,
Yeah.
right? That is the clear message that is coming from there. Pankaj, more and more things are now software driven, right? The networks are all software driven and so on. And we are talking about AI, ML, data analytics becoming vital. So, what are going to be some of the key building blocks of this entire 5G transformation which is there? And again, since we are running short of time, may I just request for very quick building blocks in 2 minutes?
Yeah, shortest form, I think AI is going to change the whole life cycle of 5G delivery, right? It's not only going to, normally we used to focus mostly on capacity and rollout. If you remember all our
Yeah,
last 2 decades, this
yeah,
so the two project matrices of all telcos, and while I was also there, was how many sites and how much coverage. I think AI is now going to help us drive something where we have not even thought about. These are the gray areas. These blocks of auto configuration, auto testing, auto enhancement, and use case delivery. I can't be thinking, because if I keep thinking of these use cases and put it to a normal manual process, I may not be able to achieve whatever 5G, as Deepak rightly said, it's unimaginable. So the AI ops, cloud driven, is going to have all the data analytics, put it into a frame of work where you can then churn out these small modules, where you can say AI ops, you can say
mm,
AI production line, AI installation, AI for security, because it will already be going to
sure.
take the feeds from Sophos and McAfee's and whoever of the world to make sure the latest signature is on that sensor, which may have a DOS attack from a particular threat. So I think that can't be manually done with a knock operator. So AI is going to do 80% of making these operations visible, simple, and policy driven. Because if you can't do
Sure.
these three manually, somebody else has to do. I can't call God here, so I have to call AI. Who will do these magic for me? So thanks. I think that's what AI will do.
Wonderful. Deepak, a very quick word from you on hyperscalers. Today the customer relationship is owned in a lot of places actually by the hyperscaler. Uh, you know, uh, they are closer to the customer as compared to the telco. But telcos are making a determined effort at trying to build up these customer relationships through various kinds of app offerings and so on. What do you see is going to be the relationship between the telcos and the hyperscalers in 5G?
Difficult one, Pradeep, to take a call on this right now, but I believe this marriage will continue and it has to continue, as both are playing a very distinct role, and these ties are going to be stronger. The dependency of hyperscalers on operators and operators on hyperscalers is even going to increase much further as we have more complex applications. So I believe it will continue like this only. This will intensify further. They have to work rather than taking sort of separate positions. They will be forced by this technology to go together in this market to be successful, and only some of those aspirational use cases are actually going to work out effectively in the market. So I personally would say that the time will happen whereupon all the hyperscalers and operators will see or will have to work hand in hand, and they will learn to work hand in hand.
Sure. Okay, I have another question that has come, and Deepak, either you can answer it or Pankaj, you can answer it. What type of towers and antennas will be used for 5G? Height of tower and distance between towers to cover residential or industrial area?
Not me. I will not be able to answer that, Pradeep.
Deepak, do you want General Saab, your?
Yeah, you want me to attempt it?
Yeah, sure.
See, 5G by itself, by its flexibility, serves different type of clients. You know, where the density of clients is heavy and they are closely placed. There we will require street furniture to set up towers. Street furniture would mean electric poles, would mean things of that height, and the coverage would be much less, maybe in maybe 100 meters, 200 meters, that sort of a thing. But in rural areas, and of course the frequency also in these small cells will be in the higher ranges so that the capacity increases.
Sure.
But in rural areas where we are not so much interested in capacity as in coverage, the tower size naturally will be higher, maybe equal to 4G.
Right.
And the frequencies which will be used will be lower, maybe 700.
Okay.
So that is the type of heterogeneous network that we will see rolling out. And they will be seamlessly integrated and carried by the technology, 5G technology.
Sure. The backend team, if we have the poll results of the second poll, can we see that quickly, please? And again, I think I'll have to share my screens to. So this is fairly divided. Boxes to cloud 36%, centralized to distributed architecture 27%, static capacity to dynamic capacity 18%, manual to automated operations 18%. So, you know, once again, I think very clearly what is emerging is that 5G is going to be a game changer. You know, there are everything, the way we used to look at networks, the way we used to look at applications, the way we used to look at security, everything is essentially going to change because of this new technology. And I think that is it's a completely new sort of a world that we are entering into with the 5G. With that, thank you very much, my panelists. Deepak, it was wonderful hearing your views on the entire thing. Pankaj, thank you very much for bringing out the technology aspects. General Kochhar, thank you very much for bringing out the entire, especially, you know, what you talked about, the government's interventions and so on. That was really great. And I'm sure, we are going to embark on this journey of 5G. And we will be entering into a completely new world in the next few years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pradeep.
Thank you.